Okay, so welcome everyone. This is what to know about the CSS Profile, our webinar today presented by MEFA, all about the financial aid application called the CSS Profile. My name is Meredith Clement, and I'm our editor-in-chief here at MEFA, and happy to be with you today. At this point, I'm sure many of you have been on many Zoom meetings, but this is just a visual of how to participate in the webinar if you haven't been on a Zoom call in a while. The chat is disabled, so if you're a participant, go ahead and click into the Q&A if you have a question. And we have some wonderful representatives, Stephanie Wells and Jennifer Bento-Pinion, behind the scenes who will be answering those questions for you. If you're not familiar with MEFA, and I'm sure many of you are, but those who aren't, we're a state authority. We were created in the early 80s, 1982, and really our sole purpose is to help families like yours plan, save, and pay for college. So we have college savings plans for younger families all the way through a lot of financial aid and college admissions guidance, and then help families throughout the college years with college loans and guidance on repayment. So our website is MEFA.org. Definitely access it throughout your entire planning period for college. We have so many resources there. So let's start with the CSS profile basics. And that's what our whole webinar today is going to focus on, that CSS profile. The application is a College Board application. So they're the company that administers it, and it's an online financial aid tool. It is required by roughly 200 colleges and universities in the country. A lot of them are private colleges and universities, but some of the bigger publics do also require the CSS profile. And then there are a few scholarship programs sprinkled throughout the country, just a few on the list that also require the CSS profile. If you're not sure if you are applying or your child is applying to a college that requires the profile, the best thing to do is to go to the college's website, check their financial aid section, and see if the CSS profile is required. The most important thing to know about the CSS profile is if you're completing it, you also still have to complete the FAFSA and send that to every college and university. So every college and university requires the FAFSA. That's that main federal application for financial aid. And then in addition, about 200 colleges and universities also require, in addition to the FAFSA, the CSS profile. The profile is used to award non-federal financial aid funds. So what we mean by that is a lot of colleges and universities have their own money. And in the financial aid process, they're giving out the federal financial aid, they're giving out state financial aid, but most schools have, and some of them, a very significant amount of their own funds, their own financial aid funds. And so schools use the CSS profile to basically award their own funds. And they use it because they want to make sure they are most equitably giving out their own financial aid. The FAFSA provides a lot of great information to colleges and universities, but the profile you'll see is much more detailed. So colleges, especially colleges with a lot of money, want to make sure they're giving it to the right students and want to make sure they're giving you the right amount of financial aid that you're eligible to receive. So they require the profile to get a lot more information to make sure you're getting the financial aid that can help your child go to college. CSS Profile opens October 1st every year. That's tomorrow. It looks like it's open today. And the FAFSA is also open. So after this webinar, if you want to get a jump start on your financial aid application process, it looks like you're able to start filling both of those out. But officially, both financial aid applications open tomorrow. And a little bit difference with the CSS profile is that it is used for both domestic students and international students to award financial aid. And institutions use the profile, as I mentioned, it collects more detailed information. So they're going to get more information about a family's finances and about their family situation, the number of children in the household, if any go to college. It also allows schools to ask customized questions. So if I'm a school and I'm using the CSS profile and I'm sending out to all my applicants, and I want to know a little bit more information than even is on the standard CSS profile application, I can add extra questions. And you'll see that they call them supplemental questions. So you might see when you're filling out the profile, oh, this university wants to know this about all of its applicants. And so that's like an extra question that colleges and universities can add on. It also permits you, the family, to write in special circumstances. Let's say you have a really large expense that isn't really asked about on the FAFSA or the CSS profile. With the FAFSA, there's nowhere for you to write a note to the financial aid office saying, we want you to know about this extra expense, or we want you to know about this one-time blip in our income. With the FAFSA, you have to send a note to the financial aid office. The profile is great in that there's a special circumstances section where you can type in a note to the financial aid office. I was at a financial aid office for years. We read every single note that we see. So if you want a message to get to the financial aid office that's reviewing your CSS profile, go ahead and type that into the special circumstances section, and they'll get that note from you. This is the CSS profile homepage. And so this is where you're going to start if you are required to fill out that CSS profile. And we'll look at the top there. There are some basically extra resources there. So you get information about the profile, there's steps to the application, information about fee waivers that we'll talk about, also about IDOC. And there's also a translation into Spanish, and then that contact us button. So that's basically your key at the top that can get you to some of those resources. If you go down to the bottom, you see there's a whole list of other resources. There's a list of participating schools, and I'll show you what that looks like. There's some tips. It says learn how to apply. That's basically a little bit of a profile overview. You're going to get a great profile overview today, but that's something else you can click on if you just want a quick overview about the profile. There's a page for parents. So if you're a parent filling out the profile, especially if you're a non-custodial parent, which we'll talk about, if there's a divorced or separated parent situation, there's information there. And then Big Future. Big Future is part of the College Board that offers scholarships. So great resources at the bottom. And then if you look on the left-hand side of your screen, we have high school seniors. You're going to click into the fall 2026 and spring 2027 CSS profile. You want to make sure you're thinking about what year is my child going to be in college. And if you have a high school senior, they're going to be in 26, 27. That's the CSS profile you want to complete. So make sure you click there, and then you'll start through the process. As I mentioned on that first homepage, there's a link to the participating institutions. And if you click into that, this is pretty much going to be a comprehensive list of all the colleges and the universities and the scholarship agencies that use the CSS profile or require the CSS profile. I say almost because schools, colleges, and universities, excuse me, have to opt in to be included in this list. And some years, a college or university, for whatever reason, decides, I don't want to be on the list. And so really the best thing to do to find out if you are applying to a college or university that requires the CSS profile is to go to that financial aid section of the college and university website. You can check this list, but just to be sure, if you're the parent, to get your child's college list and then go to the financial aid section of all of those colleges on each college's website and just check the financial aid requirements. But for the most part, most colleges and universities that use the profile are included on this list. And you'll see there's a CSS code at the top. This is just a code that's assigned to every institution. You've got the institution name, the state where it appears, whether it's used for domestic students, so whether students in the US are required to fill out the profile, and then whether the school uses it for international students. Do they have their international applicants also submit the profile? We've got a non-custodial profile if it's required, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. And then IDOC. This is basically a service where you send your documents, and we'll talk all about IDOC too. But this list lets you know, does the school use IDOC to collect documents? And so you can see on that list. So again, you get to this list by just clicking that participating institutions link right on the homepage of the profile. These are resources that are at the bottom of the profile homepage. So again, most of these are just really information sheets. You can see getting started just gives you some basics about the profile. There's a sheet about fee waivers, one for divorced or separated families, one for international students, and then there's a Spanish translation, and then additional resources at the bottom. Again, if you're on this webinar, you're going to get pretty much a good overview of the whole application. But if you're on the homepage and you just want to get a little bit more information, you can click on any of those resources. So to begin, you're going to sign in to the profile, and there's two ways to do that. If your student already has a College Board account, for example, from taking the SAT, because the College Board also runs the SATs, or from taking an AP test, because the College Board also runs AP tests, then have your student log in. It's really going to be an easier process if you do the profile under your student's login. So sit with your student at least to log in and use their College Board account, or have them set up a College Board account to log into the profile. If you really want to set up a login for the parent, so your own login, you can do that. But what you have to do is create a new, and it's going to be called a student account, but you're going to put in your information as the parent. It's incredibly confusing, but this is how the College Board runs it. So if I'm a mom and I'm doing the profile for my daughter, I can have her log in with her College Board account. That's the easiest way. And then we'll do the profile together, or I can have her log in and then I can do the profile, or I can create a new profile account. Really, it's a new College Board account with my name, Meredith. But there's only student accounts. There's no parent accounts under the College Board. So I would log into, basically, I'm going to click on, I want to create a new student account, but I'm going to put in my information. So where it says student name, I'm going to put Meredith. For student email address, I'm going to put my email address. So you have to think about it a little bit differently. And again, it's incredibly confusing. But if that's what you want to do, if you want to have a parent account, you're going to click into the I want to create a new student account and put your personal information. And then you can complete the profile that way. You do need a separate College Board account for every student. And so if you have twins, that's another reason why it's just better to log into each student's College Board account, so then each twin can log into their account. If you have twins and you want to have a parent account, you actually have to create two parent accounts with two parent email addresses, which again is going to be a bit confusing. So best thing to do, have your student log in with their College Board account and complete the profile that way. The profile is customized, so it's going to be based on your student and also the colleges where your student is applying. So you'll see you're going to list the colleges where the student's applying, and that's going to really pop up those supplemental questions and make it a more customized experience. So it's a little bit different than the FAFSA that way. As sections are required, they're gonna pop up, and you'll have a sidebar where those different sections are required, where you're going to fill in the information. And there are more modern features. You can complete the sections in any order, but the FAFSA, you really have to go by section. Profile, you can kind of jump around, especially if you have to go back and get more information and maybe about an asset, but you can fill out the information about your family, so you can pop around in the profile. And you can also complete it in multiple settings. You can do that with the FAFSA as well, but you can start it. It's a little bit of a longer application, so if you need to pause, get more information, or just run out to do something, you can definitely save it and come back to it later. And it is mobile friendly as well, so feel free to do it on your phone or tablet. Just some general information about completing it, and some of this is pretty intuitive. You're going to click save and continue to keep going to the next page or next section. If you want to pop out and come back to it later, just click save and continue, and it'll save. When you're navigating through the application, don't click the buttons like the back button in your browser. Make sure you just click the buttons that are actually in that profile application. Just like a lot of applications like the FAFSA, there's going to be hints and notes throughout. So click on those if you're not sure how to answer a question. And some of the questions have expandable hints. You can open it up and you'll see there's more information about how to answer a question. If you have an answer to a question and it's not required, do go ahead and answer it, especially the Social Security number. So Profile does not actually require you to put in your child's Social Security number, but we definitely advise it because it's going to make it easier for the college to match your profile to your family's FAFSA and to your student's admissions record. And that's going to make it really a lot easier process for the admissions and financial aid office on the back end. It is a secure application, so go ahead and put in your Social Security number, even though it's not required. It just makes tying everything together easier for the college. And then you can answer, if an answer is not required and you don't have an answer, you can go ahead and leave it blank. So one of the first questions that the profile is going to ask you is about the parents, the student's parents, and you're going to list all parents. So unlike the FAFSA, if there's a divorce or a separation situation, you're still going to list all the parents, and they could be up to 4 if the parents are remarried. So if I'm a student and my mom and dad are divorced, but they're both remarried, I'm actually going to list 4 parents on the profile. I'm going to list mom and dad, and then their current spouses as well. For all the parents, you're going to have to put in their date of birth and their email address. And for the profile, if you're in legal guardianship as a student, you're actually going to list your legal guardian as the parent. That is different than the FAFSA. On the FAFSA, if you're a student in legal guardianship, you actually don't list any parents because you're considered an independent student. But for the profile, instead, your legal guardian is going to answer the parent questions. How the profile works with divorced or separated situations. If your parents are married, then you're just going to list both parents. You're going to answer questions about both parents. If parents are separated, you are or divorced, you are still going to pick a custodial parent, which is what you do on the FAFSA. You're going to pick the main parent who's going to answer the questions about the profile and provide their income and their assets. As with the FAFSA, you're going to pick the parent who has provided the most financial support in the previous 12 months. And especially if you do the FAFSA first and you have your custodial parent, make that same parent the custodial parent on the profile. So if I am a student, my parents are divorced, and let's say my mom has provided most of my financial support over the past year. My dad provides some, but my mom does most of it, let's say. And let's say my mom is remarried and I have a stepdad. On my profile, as I'm filling that out as a student with my mom, let's say we're doing it together, my mom's going to be on my main profile and my stepdad's going to be on my profile and I'm going to be on my profile. I'm still going to list my dad, and we're going to put his name in there and his information, his email address and his date of birth. But on my profile, my mom is really going to be my custodial parent. She and my stepdad are going to report all their income, all their assets. They're going to be the main parents on the profile. Some schools require a non-custodial parent to submit their own profile, and we'll talk about that. So in my example, my dad, some schools might require my dad to do his own profile as my non-custodial parent. But for my main profile, it's going to be my mom and my stepdad. And when I am going through the profile, if I have a school on my school list that has required a non-custodial parent to provide information, they're going to ask for my non-custodial parent's email address. So I'm going to put in my dad's email address, and then he'll get information about doing that. We call it the non-custodial profile. If I am in a situation where my parents are divorced, but my non-custodial parent information is not available, maybe I've never met that parent, maybe I have no idea where he is, there's going to be some follow-up questions. So if I don't list my dad in my example, let's say my non-custodial parent's my dad, if I don't know where he is, I don't have his contact information, then I don't need to list him. So if you're in that situation, the student does not list the non-custodial parent. If there's no contact, you don't know where he or she is. If that's the case, the profile will come up with some follow-up questions. They'll ask, is the non-custodial parent deceased? Is that person unknown, incarcerated? Or is there a legal order that prevents the student from contacting that parent? The student might also be just a child of a single adoptive parent or conceived by a single parent. So maybe there was never a non-custodial parent. Or maybe there's just no contact with that parent at all. Student doesn't know where that parent is. There's no contact at all. The student will be able to indicate one of these choices, that this is the situation in our family. Based on the information, it might be that the student is then told, okay, we're not going to ask you any more questions about your non-custodial parent. But in a lot of cases, there's going to be some follow-up needed by the student, and the student is going to have to explain further the situation with the non-custodial parent. And in that case, really what the student is seeking is a waiver of the request to provide non-custodial parent information. So in my example, my dad's my non-custodial parent. I know his name, but I don't know where he lives. I'm not in touch with him. I haven't talked to him in years. What I need to do as a student is contact every college and university where I'm applying that's requiring the CSS Profile non-custodial parent information. So if I have schools that just start requiring the FAFSA, I don't need to do it for them. But I need to contact every school that's wanting my non-custodial parent information on the profile and explain my situation. Best thing to do is send an email. You can send a letter, probably email is best, and include any documentation. Maybe there's a court order that I'm prevented from seeing my father, or he's prevented from seeing me. Or maybe I could provide a third-party letter, and that's what a lot of colleges appreciate, from my school counselor or a therapist or a family friend saying, yep, Meredith hasn't seen her father in years, or they're not in touch. And in that case, that would all be sent to each college and university. So it can be a bit of a process, but I need to send that documentation and that letter or that email to every college and university that's requiring that non-custodial parent profile. And then I need to follow up and say, did you get my information? Have you waived that request? If the college does not receive your information or they have follow-up questions and I don't answer them, they're still going to require that non-custodial parent profile, and I'm not going to get any financial aid. So as a family, it is an extra step, but you really need to follow up with each college and say, did you get our letter? Did you get our explanation? Have you waived that requirement for us? And then once you do that, then you can move forward with the process. For those non-custodial parents that are able, and in most cases, students in touch with both parents, maybe even splits time between both parents, you just got to pick a non-custodial parent, and then that non-custodial parent is going to actually fill out their own CSS profile. They'll get an email request saying, your daughter has requested you to fill out the profile, and here's a link to go do so. The non-custodial parent will go to that same website, cssprofile.org. They have to have a College Board account. So non-custodial parents can't use the student's College Board account. They have to create their own account. It's a new student College Board account with parent information. Again, it's that confusing process, but non-custodial parents, you're going to create your own student College Board account, but using your name, your information, your date of birth, your email address. You're going to have to put in the students, it's called their CB FinAid ID. It's basically their profile ID number. That'll be in the email you get. And you don't have to actually provide student financial information because the student will fill that out on their own. You're just going to have to provide your own financial information and then just student demographic info. You don't have to list the colleges where the student's applying. That'll always already be on there. And you actually can't submit a non-custodial parent profile until the student has started their own profile and selected colleges, and one college has to require you as the non-custodial parent to fill out that profile. You can use a fee payment code, which we'll talk about, or you'll just pay to submit your non-custodial parent profile. If you are a non-custodial parent and you have twins or two students who are applying to profile schools at the same time, you're going to have to create two College Board student accounts using your name and information under two email addresses. So again, a bit of a process, but know that that's going to be your process when you go to fill out the profile. And one last note, custodial parents and non-custodial parents can't see each other's information, so you're not going to be able to see each other's finances. Okay, so back to filling out the profile for all families. There's going to be some general information that is required. You're going to have to list the colleges where the student's applying, and you really just have to list the colleges where that require the CSS profile. You're going to report income information for the parent and the student from 2024. So it's always 2 years prior, similar to the FAFSA. So you're filling out the 26-27 profile because that's the academic year that you're applying for financial aid for. So you go back 2 years to 2024. That's the income information that you're going to list. The FAFSA has this phenomenal tool where they just pull in your income information from the IRS automatically. Unfortunately, the profile does not have that. So you're going to have to pull up your tax return 2024 for the student and the parent. The questions are going to help you out. They're going to ask you to reference specific lines on your tax return, but you are going to have to actually pull out your tax return and look at each line, get the information, and then put it into every field where it's required. As mentioned before, the CSS profile asks for extra information, so they're actually going to also ask you to project your 2025 income information. So go ahead and do that as well. Your best guess is great, and then just put that in when those questions ask for it. You're going to have to report all of your assets. That includes any businesses, any farms, basically almost any asset that you have. There'll be a lot of questions about your assets. And for that, you want to put your current value. So income, it's your 2024 income earned. Assets, what's the value as of today? If you've got a bank account and you're paying bills, feel free to pay all those bills for the month and then go ahead and report your current asset value. Profile is going to ask for the number of people in your household and the number of children who will be in college in the upcoming academic year. So helpful to have on hand as you fill out the profile, your federal tax return, and again, it's going to refer to those line items, your W-2s, that's going to be helpful as well, any untaxed income that you got in 2024, and then basically a record of all your current assets. So again, profile is more detailed really because it gives colleges a better idea of your ability to pay for college and what financial aid you need to help you make it a reality. So it's going to ask all the same questions that are on the FAFSA. The FAFSA opened actually a week ago Wednesday. So some of you may have already done your FAFSA. So you're going to see a lot of the same questions, but there's also going to be some additional questions. One is parent income. So FAFSA really just pulls in your tax return from the IRS and asks a couple of additional questions. Profile is going to be more detailed. So it's going to ask about untaxed Social Security benefits, foreign income exclusion, if you work abroad and you have that income exclusion on your taxes. alimony, household allowances, workers' compensation, disability benefits. So pretty much any income that you receive, you're going to have to report. Parent assets, the value and the debt of your primary home, and the value and the debt of all businesses and all farms. The FAFSA does not ask about your primary home, and it does not ask about smaller businesses or commercial fisheries or farms where you live. Profile wants to know everything. So they want to know the net value of your home, the home you live in, any other home you own, every business, every farm. If you have a parent asset held in a child's name, and this question sometimes trips up families, I think because it doesn't apply to most families, but if you have the parent have an asset and you've put it under a child's name, some people do that because they don't want people to know about it, certain, perhaps the IRS or somebody else. Most families have not done this, but if you have an asset that you've put under a sibling of the applicant's name or child's name, you do have to report that as a parent asset. You also have to report your retirement value. This is not asked for on the FAFSA. In most cases, most schools do not use the value of your retirement in assessing your eligibility for financial aid. Some of them skip it entirely, some of them just eyeball it, but you will have to report what's in your 401k, what's in your 403b, just that value of your retirement. And then you are asked to report parent expenses. And this is helpful to you because parents want to know, do you have extra expenses that you're paying that prevent you from paying even more for college? That might be medical, dental expenses. Do you have kids that are in private school, K through 12, or even before K? They want to know about that. And are you paying back education loans, either for your own education or for an older child? Make sure you list all those because a lot of schools take that into consideration when assessing your eligibility for financial aid, which is good news for you. That's going to help you in the process. The CSS profile is also going to ask some additional information about your family. So the other dependents in your household, in addition to the applicant, and if they're going to school, what their school expenses are. It's going to ask information about the student. Have they won any private scholarships? Not applied for, but have they already won a scholarship for college? In most cases, the answer is, I don't know. We haven't received any scholarship information yet. So that you can just skip. Even if your child's submitted 100 scholarship applications, if they haven't won any yet, you're not going to report anything to the profile. This question is only if you have won money for college or your child has through an application. If you have any tuition benefits as an employee, you're going to list that as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's a great section for special circumstances. This appears actually a few times throughout the profile. After certain questions, it allows you to write in, do you have anything you want to tell us in here? And then there's usually a category you can check, and then you can type in some details. And this would be if your income in 2024, let's say it was really high for some reason, you had a one-time blip in your income and you want colleges and universities to know that. You would note it, maybe you had a recent layoff or a recent change in your income, some exceptional expenses that weren't asked about, huge home repair, maybe there was a big storm and you had to redo your roof. Anything you want them to know about your finances, go ahead and put it in. More information is better than less. So let them know everything. You can also send additional details to each college after you submit. So maybe you put a note in your special circumstances, but you really want to put in, you want to send them additional documentation. If you did get laid off, it's helpful to send them a layoff notice. Or if you have a different income, maybe you have that one-time blip in your income in 2024, go ahead and send documentation to show that. Oh, we had a rollover or something happened where we got an inheritance, but that's not going to repeat. I was at a financial aid office, as I notated, the more documentation I received, the better, because then I could justify any changes I wanted to make to a student's financial aid eligibility. So send anything you've got. And again, you're going to have to send it to every college and university, either through email, their financial aid office email, or you can mail it to each financial aid office. And as mentioned earlier, supplemental questions. Every college and university has the option to add them. Many don't, but you might see them throughout the application. Sometimes they're only recommended. Go ahead and answer them if you have that information. One thing to note about the profile, there is a fee to submit it. The FAFSA is always free. Unfortunately, the profile does have a fee. So it's going to be $25 to fill out the application and send it to one school. And then it's going to be $16 to send it to every additional school. So $16 for every single school. You can pay by credit card or debit card. If you're the non-custodial parent, you're just paying $25 one time. Even if your child's applying to 10 schools that require the non-custodial parent to submit a profile, non-custodial parents, you're just paying one time $25 fee. And there is a fee waiver policy. You are automatically granted a fee waiver, meaning you never have to pay to submit the profile if you fill into one of these buckets here. So if your AGI is 100,000 or less, if as a student you're an orphan or a ward of the court, if you received an SAT fee waiver when you filled out the SAT students, you're going to get one for the profile. And fee waivers, if you qualify, are open to freshmen, transfer, returning, independent undergraduate students. So some schools use the profile for grad schools. The fee waivers don't apply to those, but for most students, you're going to be eligible for a fee waiver if you meet that criteria. It is only available to students who have parents who live in the US. So international students with your whole family abroad, they are not eligible for that fee waiver. If you do get a fee waiver, then you can send the profile to an unlimited number of schools, which is good news. And for non-custodial parents, you're going to get that basically, if you meet that same criteria, which is really if your household income is 100,000 or less, you're also going to get a fee waiver. There's also something with the profile called fee payment codes. And these are codes, a lot of the time, college access organizations or sometimes high schools will buy these codes from the College Board and then give them out to lower income students who aren't able to pay for the profile. Perhaps they didn't meet that fee waiver threshold, but they still just really can't afford to pay to submit their profile. In that case, maybe a college access organization or a high school can give a student a fee payment code. So they're basically purchased, and sometimes colleges and universities purchase them as well and give out to student applicants. Every code pays for one college submission. So if I'm a student, I'm applying to 5 schools that require the CSS profile. I'm going to need 5 fee payment codes if I can't pay the fee. And there's no limit to how many I get. So if I'm a student, I'm applying to 20 profile schools, and my college access organization says, you know what, we've got 20 codes for you. That's great. I can use them all. So as mentioned, you're going to go through the profile. And again, it's really just questions about the student, question about the parents, those financial questions, as I mentioned, income, assets, household size. Then you're going to submit the profile. You will be given a chance to review the application. So all your answers are going to come up. Be sure that you go ahead and read through, make sure you've answered all those questions correctly. There will be prompts that come up if the profile thinks you've answered a question incorrectly. Maybe you put really high income for the student because you made a mistake and you put parent income under the student section. Profile is going to give you a prompt and say, can you check this and make sure it's accurate? So go ahead and take a look at those prompts. They'll come right up on the screen. And you are able to print your answers if you want, just basically a print record of what you submitted. You'll need to check a box saying that you certify that all your information is correct. You'll at this point be asked to pay, or you'll be told that you have been given a fee waiver and you don't have to pay. And then you'll go ahead and submit that profile. On the profile, there's something called the dashboard, and this is really your home base. You can access this at any time. It's going to be a tab at the top of your application, and this is going to include some great information for you as a family. It's going to be your application status at every school. So every school is going to be listed. It'll say, I've applied to Boston University. I've submitted my application on this date, and that's going to be for every single school. It's also going to show you the school's deadline and any additional requirements that school is requiring. And next steps as well. It'll show your payment that you have officially paid. This will be where you can also go back in and print the application or save it to your desktop if you want. If you submit the profile and then you realize, I want to add some additional schools. My child decided to apply to these 3 more schools that require the profile. You're going to log back into your dashboard, go right to your dashboard. This is where you can add additional schools, and then you'll pay at that time as well. There's also a link here to iDoc, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And there's also a space here to put in your non-custodial parent's email address. If you didn't put in the email address earlier, or you want to submit that email again to the non-custodial parent, that's where you can do that. Go right to your dashboard. And that CB FinAid ID, that basically the profile ID number, that's also going to be found on your dashboard. Something new with the profile in the last few years is that you can submit corrections 1 time per applicant in certain situations. If you, by accident, told the profile, I'm actually an independent student, maybe I'm an orphan or ward of the court, and then you, by accident, click that box incorrectly, you can go back in and correct that and say, no, I'm actually not. I answered that wrong. I'm a dependent student. You can correct that. If you forgot to put in some business or farm information, but there's actually also just a catch-all box. Let's say you submit the profile and then you're looking at your printout later and you realize, I put the total wrong information for my assets. I got to fix that. you can go back in and just basically select that you made a mistake, and then you can provide a written explanation of your error. You can do this about 24 hours after the original application has been submitted. So you have to wait to submit the application, wait a day, and then you can go back in and make that correction. If you're adding colleges, you can't do a correction and add a college at the same time. So go ahead and submit your correction first, and then go back in and add your additional colleges. And let me go back here. Sorry about that. The other thing you should know is if you made a mistake and you've already submitted one correction, you realize you need to make another correction, what you can also do is just send a note to all the financial aid offices as well. There's also no charge to submit the correction. So if you're fixing something small, go ahead and submit a correction. You're not going to be charged again. If it's something big that you want to explain to every financial aid office, probably best to send everyone an email, include the student's name and that CB FinAid ID, and then it just explain anything you want the financial aid office to know at that point. So IDOC, I've mentioned a few different times. IDOC is a service that's provided by the College Board, and it's basically a document collection service. A lot of colleges and universities opt to use IDOC, and what it allows them to do is, through the profile, ask you as a family to submit documentation. You submit documentation through IDOC, through this website called IDOC. It's going to basically then electronically send it to all the schools that are requiring it. Not all schools use IDOC, but some do. For example, some schools might say, I really want to look at everyone's tax return. I just want to see it. Even though families referenced it when answering the questions, I want to look at every tax return. The school I looked at collected everyone's tax return. So the school will use IDOC. They'll send you a message and say, you filled out the profile. Now we want you through IDOC to submit your tax return. You'll basically upload it to the IDOC website, and then IDOC will submit it electronically to the school. It's only going to send it to the school that's requiring it. So it's not going to send it to every school that you listed on your profile. Basically IDOC has its own website, its own dashboard. So you're going to go there, and the forms that are required for you will be on the IDOC dashboard. So when you finish your profile, you'll look at the profile dashboard, and there it might say, okay, a couple of your schools are requiring you to do IDOC. You will get communication from the school saying, we want you to use IDOC to submit these specific forms. And then you can link over to IDOC. So you will get communication from the college. Any questions about certain requirements, just call every college and just make sure that you have, or they have, what they need. But with IDOC, you're going to submit whatever's required. If a tax return is required, go ahead and submit the whole thing. Don't just submit page 1 and 2. Submit all your schedules, submit the entire tax return, because colleges often will come back and say, oh, we do need your Schedule C, and we only got the first 2 pages. So submit everything when you send it. That'll prevent any delays. And you do need to make sure you sign the documents. Most of us do our taxes online, and we never have a wet signature. Schools are going to require you to sign your tax return, so you might have to print out that signature page, sign it, and then resubmit it. There is a IDOC customer service number. We have that on the screen here, but that'll also be on the IDOC website as well. This is an introduction right on that IDOC homepage. There is an introduction to IDOC. So if you really want to deep dive into how IDOC works and how you're going to use it to submit your documentation, there's about a 14-minute overview that you can watch on the IDOC homepage. And then for customer service with the profile, you can click on Contact Us at the top of any page of when you're in the profile, and you'll get this Contact Us screen. So it's going to give you the hours of their customer service. There's a phone number. We pointed it out here because it's pretty small, but you'll have that toll-free phone number that you can use. They do also have an email address. Sometimes they include it on the Contact Us form. Sometimes they don't. Currently, it's not on there, but their email address is finaidservices@collegeboard.org. So that is the email address. You can take a screenshot right now, or when we send out the slides, you'll have it. This is the email address. If you're more of an email person or you want to email, this is specifically the CSS profile. If you have a question about a college's financial aid process, email the college. But if you have a question specifically about the profile, you can email or call the CSS profile. You can also always call MEFA too, and we can walk you through any questions you have. So what you can do now as a family, research all your deadlines for the financial aid process. Some of you have probably already been on our Financial Aid 101 webinar and our FAFSA webinar. But if you haven't yet, what we always are telling families is go into every college and university website, find out the financial aid application, find out the deadline, and make sure you submit your documents before the deadline. Deadlines are so important in the financial aid process. Schools do run out of money, or they give preference to people who are on time. So make sure you submit your FAFSA and your profile by the deadline. Everything opens officially tomorrow, October 1st, but it looks like everything's open today. So you can definitely start. And then we have a couple of resources for you. We have QR codes on the screen. We've got a great timeline for college admissions and financial aid. We send this out a few times a year. You can go ahead and take a picture of that QR code. That's just going to help you with step-by-step through the seasons of everything you as a family need to be doing to get through this very important and very busy year. And then we have a lot of webinars throughout the year. And so you can click on that second QR code or really take a picture of it to find all of our other webinars. We have some great webinars once you get your financial aid offers that are going to walk you through how to evaluate those, and then some later on about college loans, how to pick a loan, and then a few different resources through webinars throughout the year. So definitely invite you to, at least to look at that list and see if there's any other webinars that might be beneficial to you. If you're not on MEFA's emails, definitely sign up. This is an example on your right-hand side of what an email, our emails are pretty quick. There's about 3 content blocks, really short snippets of information. We're trying to send you guidance that's going to help you through this process and nothing more. So we want to send you very succinct messages that can help you get through admissions, get you through financial aid, get you through paying for college. If you're not signed up for our emails, definitely recommend it. You can sign the QR code, or again, take a picture of this QR code to sign up. Easy to sign up. And then the emails are going to be catered to your children. So if you have a 12th grader, and that's why you're on this webinar, but you also have a 5th grader, we're going to send you emails that are catered to those ages. So you're not going to get information that we send to newborns, let's say, or families with newborns. We're just going to send you emails that are really relevant to the ages of the children in your family. And then finally, we are all over social media. We're posting every day. So if you're on social, definitely invite you to follow us and link through. This is where we're also going to list a lot of scholarships. So we love scholarships. We love sending scholarships to families. We have a lot of scholarship articles, but we're also going to let you know on social that another scholarship article has dropped, or we found a great new scholarship we want you to know about. So Facebook, Instagram, X, we're on LinkedIn as well. And then we also have great YouTube videos. We have a podcast too. If you're a podcast listener, those drop every 1 to 2 weeks, some great episodes all about college planning. And that's the conclusion of today's webinar. We'll go ahead and answer or open it up to questions to answer. If you have to drop, thank you so much for joining us. We do have that 800 number on the screen. And then our main email address is collegeplanning@mefa.org. And the phone and email, we just have an amazing group, Stephanie and Jennifer included, of college planning team members with decades of experience in higher education and financial aid and admissions who are going to be able to answer those questions for you. So Steph and Jennifer, if you have any questions that you have now, we're happy to kind of go through those.
Yeah, if you want to just, we did get a lot of questions, Meredith, about uploading documents. How do they know which forms to upload?
Okay.
Business
Yeah.
statements, tax returns. How do they know what to upload? So what documents will be required to upload?
Okay, that's a great question. So again, after you do the profile, go ahead and look at your dashboard, because your dashboard is going to show the schools that you have listed and if there's any additional requirements and if they use IDOC. But really, every college and university is going to also contact you to let you know. So you might get an email address from the college, or you might get an email from the college or university saying, we've got your profile. And now what we need you to do is submit your tax return and submit these 3 asset statements. And this is how you do it. So they're going to give you information. So keep an eye out for college and university emails. But first thing to do, look at your profile dashboard and see if there's any requirements. If it's listed that they use IDOC and that there are some requirements, and you don't receive an email from that college or university, probably best to call that college or university and say, what do you need? I didn't receive communication from you, but you should get communication from them so that you know exactly what to do. And then you're going to be basically sent over to the IDOC website from the college or university, and then you'll log in here, and this is where you'll upload your tax return, your asset statement, anything that's required. So you're not going to upload anything to the profile website. You're only going to upload documents to the IDoc website through the IDoc process, and the college or university should contact you to let you know exactly what they need and their process. So you should hear from them. But any questions, best to reach out to every college and university to do that.
Thank you, Meredith. Um, if you wouldn't mind, we did get a lot of questions about corrections and changes. So
Mhm.
maybe just a brief review of that. How do you submit corrections or changes after it's submitted?
Yeah. So once you do the profile and you submit it, you have to wait about 24 hours. And that's really just so they can process your application. And then you can log back in and you'll be able to just go to your dashboard and you'll see where you can submit a correction. You can only submit one correction. So this is a different process than the FAFSA. The FAFSA, you can log back in again and again and make corrections. Probably not best to do that, but if you have 2 or 3 corrections, you can do that on the FAFSA. The profile is a little limited. It lets you submit a correction one time. So if you submit the profile and then you realize that night, oh, we answered this wrong, wait 24 hours, log back in, go to your dashboard, and you'll see where you can basically submit a correction. It's going to give you the opportunity to select what the correction is. A lot of the time you can say, I made a mistake, because that's often what the reason is you need to make your correction. And then you'll be able to type in the correction, what you're correcting, the information that you need to correct. If you feel like you can't communicate through this process, let's say you really want to explain something and you don't feel like there's enough space to do so, best thing to do then is to contact every financial aid office that's requiring the profile, send them all an email and say, I just submitted the profile on this date. I want to make sure you understand this. So again, there's this process, go through the dashboard, select the correction, and then write in. But if you're worried that you're not really communicating exactly what you want to communicate, email every financial aid office. Financial aid offices are so used to hearing from families with bits and pieces of information, so they're monitoring their email every second, and then they're making sure that if there's an email about your student, it's going into your student's record. So their systems are incredibly organized in most cases. So if you really need to communicate something, do not be afraid to email them. And again, more information, more documentation, the better. So just communicate whatever it is you need to correct.
Thank you, Meredith. And one question that we got frequently as well, this is a combo question, but does it matter if you fill out the FAFSA or the profile first? And does it matter if you fill it out months before the due date?
Oh, that's a great question. FAFSA profile, it doesn't really matter which one you do first. FAFSA is much easier. And so a lot of people like to do that first because you're getting your feet wet in the financial aid process. You get a sense of some of the questions that are going to be asked on the profile. And then you feel good. You submitted the profile or you submitted the FAFSA, you've done one application. So I always tell people, do the FAFSA first.
Yep.
You'll get that done and then dive into the profile. We do tell people to do them as soon as you can after October 1st. Once in a while, colleges and universities do run out of funds. When we've checked in with colleges and universities, a lot of them say, as long as you submit by the deadline, you're good. But sometimes colleges and universities do run out of funding. So submit the financial aid applications as soon as you can. You don't have to do it, at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning on October 1st, but try to get it done in October. Especially if you're applying early action or early decision, you might have a November 1st financial aid deadline. So go ahead and submit them now. And it is okay that you're submitting it even months before. One financial aid office might not look at your information until February, but that's okay. You're going to report the assets the day you submit. So let's say I'm a family and I'm deciding October 1st, I'm doing my FAFSA and my profile. I'm going to report my assets on October 1st as they stand. I'm going to report my income from 2024. When the financial aid office reviews it in February 2026, maybe I have more assets at that point. I don't need to update it. I don't need to update them. All I needed to do was report the assets on the day I filled out the application. So I can do that. That all to say too, if you have a ton of assets, and as I mentioned earlier, if you're paying a lot of bills in October, pay those bills first and then report your assets so that the profile schools know, oh, they don't have this large amount of cash that they're sitting on because you already used all that for your bills. So pay all your bills and then fill out your applications, but do them as soon as you can. I would say sometime this month, and especially make sure you submit them before your deadlines.
That's great, Meredith. We actually have several questions about communications. So who's getting the communications? Is it all going through the student's email? Can they provide the parent's email to the school to get the communication so it doesn't just go to the student? So we had several of similar questions to that.
Yeah, that's a great question. In most cases, schools and the federal government and the CSS profile are going to communicate with the student, which is an incredibly frustrating process for parents, as most of you parents are filling out the financial aid applications. But especially because of some privacy laws and because the student is really the applicant, a lot of information is going to go to the student. So what a lot of families do is when they start this process, or especially when they're doing the financial aid applications, for the student, they use a family email address. So they might create a family email address, but at least for the financial aid applications, so that all communications about the financial aid process or any follow-up from the school is going to the family email address that you've used for the student. If you've already started the applications and you use the student's email address, just be on your student and have them check email to make sure that they're getting the communications, because in a lot of cases, the school's communicating to the student. A lot of recommendations from colleges and universities are to pick a day, maybe it's Wednesday night at dinner, and that's when you ask all the questions of the student of let's open your email together, let's look through and let's answer anything that came in about your college applications, about your financial aid. But in a lot of cases, it's going to go right to the student. So if you have a question as a parent, you can still email from your email address to the school and then they'll email back to you. So if you communicate with them first, they'll certainly answer your question by replying and writing back to your email address. But if it's a general requirement, hey, everyone, all student applicants, we're requiring all of you to use XYZ or to submit this documentation through IDoc, it's a lot of cases going to go to the student. So just a word to all of you parents, make sure you're in communication with your students.
Thank you, Meredith. I know we're getting close to time, but we do have several questions. I've been answering them, but if we want to just send it out to the group live, do they need to wait until the students applied for admissions to fill out the FAFSA or the profile? And if so,
Oh,
what?
that's a great question as well. You do not have to wait. So maybe your student's still writing their college essay, but you want to get your financial aid and profile, your financial aid, your FAFSA, and your CSS profile, those applications in. You can certainly complete them, submit them before the student applies for admission. They will just sit in the financial aid office really electronically, but they'll sit there waiting. And then once your student submits their admissions application, really they're going to tie a lot of the time with the social security number, which is why that's so important, or with name and address. So once that admissions application basically drops at the college, so reaches the college, then the college electronically is going to search for, okay, do we have a FAFSA for this student? Do we have a CSS profile? There's usually a whole team at each college and university that's tying together the applications. So feel free to do the financial aid applications first to get them out of the way, even if you haven't submitted an application. If you submit a FAFSA or a CSS profile to a school and then your son or daughter doesn't end up applying, they decide, I don't really want to go there, I don't end up applying, they're just going to get rid of your data. So they're as secure as they can be with the information, but it's perfectly fine if you submit a financial aid application somewhere and the student doesn't apply. They'll just destroy that information and it won't go anywhere.
Great. I think we have time for one more, and we did get several of these as well. Um, it's regarding the student's college board email. So often it's the high school email address that the high school requires them to use for their Common App and all the other forms they're filling out. How does that work afterwards when the high school email is no longer working? Can they just update it with the profile or in FAFSA, or how does that work?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And we'll find out about that because at this point, go ahead and fill out the College Board. Go ahead and fill out the profile using the College Board account, which is tied to the student's high school email address. In most cases, the entire process with the profile will be done by the time the student graduates. But that's a great question. If they graduate and then that email address is still needed, and of course it's not used because the student has graduated, that would be an issue. So let's find out about that. What we'll do after this is we'll send out all these questions with the answers, and I'll make sure I get that answer from the College Board. It might be easy enough to change the email address, but we'll find out and we'll send that out to everybody.
Okay, sounds good. I think that's it for today. Thank you, Meredith.
All right. So thank you, everyone. It was so good to have all of you on here. And let me pull up our information. Oops, at the bottom here. just to get you, here's our phone number and email address, and definitely contact us if you have any more questions. So thanks for joining today.